If you're a fan of the MLS, and if you're watching this video, you probably are, then you should be listening to a podcast called MLS UK. It's Henry and Elliott, two guys from the UK, talking on a weekly basis about MLS. It is absolutely fantastic. These guys are radio producers and presenters, so they are absolute pros. I'm talking to Henry today. I hope you enjoy it. Hi guys, I am here with MLS UK's Henry Hewitt. Hi Henry.
Hi Tom, how you doing?
I'm very, very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I've been watching your videos on YouTube, following your journey discovering MLS. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, I'm really excited to have you on because, as I'm sure you're aware, there isn't a huge amount of UK-based MLS content, and you guys are the absolute kings of it.
Oh well, that's nice of you to say, but yeah, there's us, and there's a few sort of fan, guys that follow certain clubs, and there's been a few that have done it a lot longer than we have. But yeah, it's nice that you've said that, and yeah, me and Elliott really enjoy it. We love the league, and yeah, it's just become a passion of ours over the last 4 or 5 years now.
Good stuff. Right, yeah, I was going to get into that actually. Yeah, well, we may as well start here. So how did you first get into it? What brought you through to the world of MLS?
Well, me and Elliott used to work with each other on a radio show, and he was the presenter, I was the producer. And while the songs were playing, we'd talk about football, and he's lucky enough, his dad's got a place in Orlando, so he goes over quite a bit, and he started watching Orlando City when he got to MLS, and he'd come back and say like, oh, it's a really good league, and to be honest, my experience of MLS was just when David Beckham signed. I started watching a little bit then, yeah, as a few of us did, but then because I was at university at the time, it did help with the matches being quite late, but then the sociable side kind of got in the way. I should say the academic side got in the way of staying up late, but it was the sociable side.
Never the way you know, is
it? So I did get an LA Galaxy shirt with Beckham on the back, but that's as much as I did. And then when obviously working with Elliott, and he said, next season, watch it. I promise you won't regret it. And I started watching it, and then Atlanta came into the league, so I thought, well, I'll follow Atlanta, and yeah, it's kind of gone from there. We decided to do a podcast as we had the studio and the microphones available, and yeah, now here we are 4 or 5 years later.
Fantastic, yeah, being at the forefront of the UK coverage, that's fantastic. What a journey you've been on, actually. That's a great trajectory. So is Atlanta your team now? Is that who your allegiance is with?
Yeah, well, I have said this on the podcast. I was split between two teams. Atlanta, because at that point I'd never been to America apart from on a connected flight to the Bahamas, which went through Atlanta. So a very loose link there. And also it was either going to be Dallas because it was Homer Simpson's dream to own the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm a big Simpsons fan. But then I did feel that because it was Atlanta's first season, I thought, well, it's my first season, it's theirs, I'll follow Atlanta. And yeah, I mean, the last 18 months, it's not been pretty, but before then, it was a very good decision.
Well, fantastic. Yeah. This is one of the things about the MLS that I think that we don't generally get in this country, is the unpredictability of it. The winners this year are not necessarily going to be the winners next year. Obviously, you do get some patterns, but there's always scope for teams that are not well fancied to do very well in the league. And obviously, there's various factors that come around to that. But I think, yeah, from my experience looking at the whole league and sort of thinking, okay, I'm naturally going to favour some teams over others because of the stories or the people, that sort of stuff. And I have found myself having quite affections with certain clubs, and then not so much with other ones. It's a strange sort of mix. And I think it's partly to do with sort of growing up with British football, and having the things that turn you on or off to various teams sort of transpose a little bit on there. So one of the other things I wanted to come to is what over the years you've been watching it, is what do you think are the main sort of differences on the field and off the field in sort of football and football culture between the UK and the US?
Well, I think in the UK it's obviously far more tribal. I support Bolton Wanderers, so obviously through that we have a big dislike for the likes of Wigan and Blackburn and Man United and teams like that who are local to us. Whereas in MLS, they are trying to build that, and with Heineken Rivalry Week, that's what they're doing. But I think, the history just isn't quite there yet. Yeah. Maybe in another 25 years, when it's gone past 50 years of MLS, it will be there, and teams will kind of find their place and who they dislike for whatever reasons. But I think, that's the main reason. And, I do think it's, in the UK, sometimes we can be very stuck in our ways. Like as I said, Sport Bolton, one of the founder members of the Football League. It's 1877, I think we were. The first game was, and there's just not that history in MLS. So I think MLS has got this scope to really try new things and really expand what they want to do and have different ideas, and they bring in new teams in, and those teams and on the trades and all of this stuff that is unique to MLS. Whereas here in the UK, we are stuck in our ways, and we go, well, this is what we've done for 150 years. This is what we're going to continue to do, and we're not going to entertain anything else. So, I think that's the main difference, is that MLS really is it's a unique league, but it's a very forward-thinking league, I feel, and I think there's other leagues, especially in Europe, that can look at it and really take stuff from it.
I agree. I think that you're absolutely right, and it is forward thinking. It is trying new things. I think that there isn't as much baggage on there from the old school, what has loosely been termed legacy fans, isn't it? Really, in a rather detrimental way recently. There is less baggage from that, so they haven't got the things to that they need to, that they would be controversial to get rid of or to change. But you can see the stories coming already. The stories are being enacted, and the rivalries are starting to come because of things that have happened, and the supporters don't forget, who knocked them out or who fouled who to knock somebody out of it, of those sort of things. So it's great. I think you can tell that it's growing. It's certainly growing in popularity with looked at some of the numbers all over the world. I think it's very interesting to see its growth and development, and I think we'll come to the sort of future of it a little bit later on. But have you seen? I don't know what sort of demographic stats you get from the listeners to the podcast, but where is your audience? Is it mainly US people? Is it mainly UK people? Is it moving up or down?
It's a split. It's definitely a split between North America and the UK. There was a lot for a long time. It was actually split 50-50, and now North America has actually pushed on, and and we get more listeners from there, which I guess in terms of population, that was always going to happen at some point. But it's just interesting to see with the World Cup and with the amount of players coming from MLS to Europe, and the continuous sort of exodus of legends to MLS. Whether in the UK that will increase and people will find us, we'll have to wait and see. But it's definitely North America, and at the moment that he's probably about I don't know, without going into our stats, it's probably a 60-40 at the moment.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I think that is good. I think certainly from my point of view, I look all around the world to get media on stuff that I like and am interested in. And for MLS, I listen to obviously you guys. You're my number one, clearly. And there's some other great shows as well. There's Extra Time, and there's a few other sort of more parochial shows that concentrate on different teams, but they're brilliant, and I always want to listen through to them. I think the personalities really shine through. I think there's those people that the reasons you keep going back to a podcast as well, and not only just to get the info, but also the opinions and to sort of hang out with people that you to get to know through podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing what we found with with people in the States, and in particular, like you said, with Extra Time, we've had Andrew Weeby on, we've had Kaelan Carr on the podcast. They are all very thankful for what we're doing. We just see it as this podcast that we do out of Elliott's garage, or on Zoom. Whereas they're actually going, no, but you are, it's really refreshing to see two English guys that are doing this podcast about MLS. And we always say, I think if it was the other way around, if it was two Americans doing it about the Premier League, they wouldn't have that same reaction from people over here, which is really, really interesting, really. And, it's a shame because, we're trying to help grow MLS, not only in this country, but in the States. And, with our podcast, as you know, we have little features and little quirks about it. But hopefully, if you are, if you're just getting into soccer in the States, then you might go, oh, well, I'll listen to these guys because they're not throwing stats at me. We're having a bit of fun. But yeah, it is definitely, the reaction we've had in the States has been, we're so thankful for it.
That's fantastic. And I do hear, actually, from the interviews that I've done so far with various MLS fans, that they do get a lot more interest when the big names go. And if we do get, I don't know, the rumours have recently been of Messi, of Suarez, of Fabregas. These names have all been in the hat for mainly for Inter Miami, to be honest. But those sort of massive names going over there, can't help but draw attention to it. I know when, from talking to my friends here who are, again, not necessarily into MLS, they watched it when Gerrard was over there or when Beckham was over there, like you alluded to earlier on. A player that you really know and love has gone over there. It might be Andre Pirlo for some people. So they've dipped into it. But I think that, on its own merit, it is starting to get its own standing. I think I was over in Leeds when during the MLS Cup final, and I was sort of going, I'm really sad I'm going to miss this. Went into a bar with my mates, and it was just on the big screen. I was like, this is fantastic. I didn't even try and go there because to try and catch the match. I just assumed nobody would be watching it, and it was up there, and it was brilliant. So I think there really is a growing number of people in this country taking notice of what is, and what you've said earlier on, it's a really, really entertaining league that we're missing out on, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think MLS Cup, really helps the perception over here because, after the game is that, and, we all know that British football fans can be pessimistic to what's going on in MLS and condescending. But, after that game, all I saw was positive comments saying what a game that was, and Bale scoring, and then all the drama that happened around it. So it does help that when the games are interesting. If that was 0-0, and maybe we wouldn't have had that reaction. But it is getting more positive. And also, you mentioned Leeds. I think the stuff they're doing there with Jesse Marsh and the Tyler Adams and the other American players that have been linked and have joined them, I think that does help the perception because people are seeing that these guys are coming over, they're young, they're talented, and they should be respected.
Absolutely. I think, Tyler Adams has done, I think, the country a massive favour in just being so good on and off the field during the World Cup. He's really made a big name for himself. He was in the mainstream on sort of USA media. He was, on non-football programmes, on non-sports programmes in the US. I think that's brilliant for building the brand to the US, who obviously aren't necessarily falling in love with football or soccer in the same way that many other countries do, but it is obviously growing very, very fast. But also on the international stage, as you've alluded to, that's really getting those players noticed, and they're thinking, hang on, he's a really good guy, and obviously the manager are there as well. So I think, where have they come from? Is it the New York Red Bulls or Philadelphia in the case of Brendan Aronson? What have they done before, and what is this league? So I think there's definitely an element that's getting more high profile. And if we do have the big money moves of any one of those players that I mentioned a minute ago, going over, or of anybody of that stature, you're getting that very, very top class players going over there consistently as well. So I think that's something really, really exciting for the league as a whole, and I think for the exposure of it. So do you guys, when you obviously doing your updates week to week, and obviously you've done some World Cup ones as well, which has been really good to see, following the US and Canada at the World Cup, which has been, again, absolutely fascinating. Probably the best World Cups for both of them for a significant amount of time, maybe ever actually, but in terms of success. But obviously the league is in America. It lends itself to national team coverage. But do you find that you do a lot of US men's national team stuff alongside the MLS, or is it just MLS outside of the times where it's off season?
It tends to just be MLS, to be honest. I think we decided that with the way that the leagues run, in the summer when the European leagues aren't particularly, well, they're not playing at all, it's close season, we wanted to go heavy on MLS just so we could catch to catch people who were sort of hungry for soccer and it isn't there. And so it tends to be MLS. We do mention the US men's national team when they play in, and maybe throw a prediction in or something, but I think for us, we've fallen in love with the league, and the offshoots of that being the US men's national team. We always have an interest in it. Chris Smith, who's a friend of ours, who's on Twitter, he does a lot about the US men's national team. So we kind of keep up to date with what he's doing and what he's saying. But it tends to just be MLS. But I mean, it has been nice watching the World Cup and seeing players and going, well, we know him from there and him from this team. And, I went out and watched England beat the States in Manchester, and all my mates were going, well, who's he and who does he play for? He's good, isn't he? So it was nice.
It is great, and it does surprise people as well. During when we went out to watch the USA Netherlands game, and there was a mixed crowd in the bar. There were some Americans in there as well, and I went in there with my mate, and sort of just going, didn't know hardly any of the players. You knew a few from the US side, and we did. Obviously it was Ferreira's first game. I was like, I can tell you how many goals. He's got 18 goals in the MLS last season. He's 20 years old. He plays it. It was like giving him all the stats. He was like, why do you know all this? It's really bizarre, but nobody would question it if it was a Dutch team that you knew all about or a German team you knew all about. It never comes up, and you just go, oh, you're interested in that league. And it's just fine, because it's still unusual, isn't it? The MLS fanship.
It is, yeah, and I've got friends that will message me talking about it if they've seen something, and people say to us like, why do you follow MLS? We live in a country, the greatest league in the world. We live in a country that the Premier League, but actually most soccer fans in America watch the Premier League over MLS. So it's it is a funny one, but I think you give it a chance and you enjoy it, you love it, and also I think it's not trying to be the Premier League, and that's what I love about MLS. It's putting a US stance on this game that we love. I don't necessarily follow NFL. I've been to some of the matches at Wembley, and I watch the Super Bowl every year, but I like what they do there, and in NBA and baseball, that sort of East and West and the playoff system, and I think it works well for MLS. And I know some people are wanting promotion and relegation, but then I think when you do that, you kind of put it in line with and compete with other leagues around the world. And I think MLS should just go out and do it on its own and try and be successful from there.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I think it's a topic that's come up a couple of times whilst talking about MLS. And I think there are certain factions of fans of UK football. I would say UK football because it isn't just England, where they maybe are a bit bored of top 6 domination, top 4 domination. Well, it's top 2. You know what's going to happen, and everything is run by money. And as you see people going, I've started to watch a bit more non-league, or I've started to watch a bit more of the German league. I think MLS is going to benefit from that, because certainly from where I'm coming from, it's something completely fresh and new. And obviously, it has only been a short amount of time that I've been looking into it, but completely fell in love with it really easily and quickly. And a lot of people are looking elsewhere and getting sort of football fixes from other leagues around the world and down the football pyramid. Do you find that yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, even with me watching Bolton, excluding the days of Sam Allardyce when we were getting into Europe, I'm probably enjoying watching Bolton the most now when we're in League One than I ever have, because you're winning most weeks, and it's something that's still quite different to Bolton Wanderers, who are used to being in the top 2 leagues. But I'm kind of thinking, well, eventually, hopefully, we will get back to the Premier League. But then I'd be like, well, what's the point? Because you're not going to finish in the top 6. It's now there's a couple more teams being bought out, so then it's going to be a top 8 and a top 10 and a top 20. And you're basically fighting to be the best of the rest for your time. And I think that's with MLS. You've hit the nail on the head. You look at the teams that have won MLS Cup. No team is winning it every single year. No. You do get teams that make the playoffs every year, but we don't necessarily make MLS Cup. It's a unique league, but you don't know what is going to happen, and it's very rare when we all do, ourselves and all the other podcasts and MLS, people do their predictions in a few months for the 2023 season. Yeah, you're going to get a load of different answers to who's going to win MLS Cup, and probably none of them will be right. It'll probably be someone completely random.
Absolutely. We've got completely unknown quantity in St. Louis coming in as well, which is going to mix things up again. So you think absolutely. Yeah. Obviously, we don't know how the draft is going to go, and there's so much more which is unpredictable there. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm just diving in. I've got a little notebook here. I've just started making note whenever I watched the matches during last season. So it wasn't even all of last season. It wasn't even half of last season. It was just the end of it. So the matches I've watched, or I watched highlights of, I've written some notes down. I've turned to my Atlanta United page, and it's not comprehensive. I'm not going to lie to you, Henry. It says Atlanta United. It says beautiful away shirt. I think it's unequivocal. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love that one. And then I've written Joseph Martinez bicycle kick. And I can't remember it, but I was apparently impressed by it. Can you remember this goal towards the end of the season?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's what Martinez is. I think, it's obviously his time at Atlanta, is ended, and I think for the last 18 months, 2 years, it has been these little moments of magic that he's provided. Whereas at the start of his career at Atlanta, it was every week he was scoring goals, and it's now little moments, but. Yeah, I mean, Martin, what a player he's been for Atlanta. He is a legend, and I think it is time that both sides go their separate ways. But yeah, I think that goal in particular was a great finish. And this is the thing with him: he's that good a player that despite not playing every week, he'll still get in the goal of the season montage with little moments like that.
Fantastic. I mean, it's great when you get to know these players and see them in action. You know exactly what they're going to do. So, who have been some of your other favourite players through the years from Atlanta and elsewhere?
Well, I mean, Atlanta's easy. You look at Miguel Almiron and a few of the players from that sort of era. In terms of other teams. I really like Ricky Booth from LA Galaxy at the moment. Yeah. I'm really intrigued to see how they'll do next season with him and Chicharito up front together. They had glimpses at the end of last season, and I really think for LA Galaxy, because we always joke saying that in the time we've watched MLS, we know LA Galaxy is this massive franchise, but they've never actually done anything. They've actually probably not made the playoffs in more seasons than they actually have when we've been watching them. Yeah. And even after that, they've never gotten to as far as the conference final. So I really think this is the year for them now to push on and try and challenge. And I think the beauty of MLS, as we've said, is that you can actually finish third or fourth in the conference and still win MLS Cup, and no one remembers. So so that's he's been going. I mean, in terms of over the years of watching MLS, I think I look back to, I tend to have a soft spot for the British players. I'm not going to lie. I really, even though Atlanta and Red Bulls were fighting for Supporters Shield one year, I really love Bradley Wright Phillips. I love it. I think he's one of the poster boys, along with Johnny Russell, who's another of my favourite players. Obviously he's Scottish, and I think they're the poster boys for. We say that, there's players that are hanging around the Championship or League One in England, and, you think, well, if you've got this opportunity to go to the States and play in MLS, why wouldn't you? Absolutely. It's a great quality of life. It's a big league. You're playing against some of the biggest names in the world. Yeah. And those two have kind of stagnated a little bit in the English leagues, gone over there and been a massive success.
Absolutely, you only have to look at someone who's not British, but coming over from European leagues with Hani Mukhtar, who came in and suddenly is top scorer. You never know what sort of impact you can make over there. Like you say, it's a beautiful place to go to. You don't have to learn a language, and you're going to hit the ground running. It should be really, really attractive actually to those sort of audiences. Or maybe, I don't know, I think maybe unless you're a designated player and can earn the big bucks, maybe it's not that attractive financially. I'm not really sure what the difference is between. I know the designated players can have very, very high wages, but do you know what the averages are for non-designated players?
I don't know what the averages are, but I think going off, because MLS each year, and another good thing about the league is that they will release player wages every year, so we know kind of.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it might not be good if you're a player and you want to keep your wage private, but the funny thing about that is this year is that the likes of Bale and Chiellini for LAFC weren't in the top 10, so they're. Yeah, I mean, we can say that they're only earning about $1.5 million, but I mean, I don't know how much you earn, but I pretty much assume that for both of us, if we were earning that, we would be very happy.
That's safe, yeah. Safe to assume that's not the case here.
But yeah, I mean, and then you've got the likes of Insigne, who's on, I think he's on about 10 million. So it can jump up quite a lot, which, I think it's probably a bit more than in Europe. You've got, players will be on there'll be a big difference between, I don't know, if you look at Manchester City, between Haaland and a youth player, but yeah. I think over the 11 or the 18 in the squad, you're probably a lot closer to what you can get in the MLS when you've got one player who could be on $10 million and then another one who's earning, a fraction of that. So, I think they make it work somehow. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it must help with squad harmony as well. There's not such a discrepancy between the high earners and the lower ones there. So it probably is more of a meritocracy, which again, similar with the draft system. There's more sort of leveling up for the lower teams, isn't there? There is more of a chance, which naturally you wouldn't associate with the United States necessarily as to trying to make things equal. It's a bit more of a socialist policy, isn't it, to make that? But it makes for much better entertainment, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And it's, as I said before, it's their way of doing it, and I think you've got to respect that, and you've got to really praise them for fitting the soccer model into that. And it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next 10 or 15 years. Obviously the Apple TV deals come in, so whether Apple will look and go, we're happy with the way it is, or whether they'll go, actually we want a bit more entertainment here, and we're seeing what's happening in the Premier League or the Championship with relegation. We want to introduce that, and it won't affect money coming into the clubs. Maybe they'll accept it then, but for now, it's their way of doing it, and I think it adds to the excitement, these little quirks that they've got.
Absolutely, and like I said, I don't think it doesn't need that to survive or thrive. I think it's going to do very, very well just as it is. I mean, you've got some, some clubs are pulling in. Well, as you will well know, over 40,000 for home games, for people actually going to watch them at the very, very top end, which is absolutely phenomenal for a country that is for a certain part of a country where it's not their main sport. I mean, not everyone does, and obviously we've got teams like New York and NYCFC, who I think we haven't yet got a home, but that will come. That is, the plans are in place now. So, there is a lot to come on that. What else do you think that the future of MLS might bring? Do you think there'll be more expansion teams? We keep hearing that after St. Louis there will be one more that was potentially going to come in. But do you think that those leagues in the East and West will keep expanding? Do you think there'll be other franchises that come into that? And what do you think that future holds? I think he said about 32. So yeah, it would be Las Vegas and another one maybe. And right.
Yeah, I think it'll stay like that for a while. I think they want to get settled, and I think they will do that. I think the World Cup coming in a few years, that'll have a massive sale. I think it'll be an interesting time, this sort of 3 years leading up to that, and then the years after it, on the effects that the World Cup can have. Whether if the States do well, or if in Canada do well, it can entice more fans into the stadiums. You don't know, but I mean, it's such a when I go and watch Bolton, I arrive at 10 minutes to 3 and I leave at 10 past, and I stay in my seat all game. At half time, I go and get a pie and then come back up, and it's a very fixed how I watch football in this country. Yeah. Whereas in the States, I went to watch Orlando once, and it's so different. You turn up about an hour and a half, 2 hours, even longer in some cases before the match. Yeah. You do all the the festivities around the ground. Then you go in the ground, and the match kicks off, and you're looking around and thinking no one's in the seat, and that's because people are still getting burgers or tacos. I mean, my wife,
Yeah.
she hates going to watch Bolton because she don't like pies, and that's pretty much all that's got to offer. Whereas in the States, she was like, there's nachos, there's hot dogs, there's all these different things.
Yeah.
So it's a very different way. So I think in the States, because it is that more sort of family orientated, it's more of a sociable thing, I think, rather than watching the match. I think that will help entice fans in the next few years. Families as well, and I think that's the big change. I think will be getting more people in the stadiums and getting just a bit more respect around the name of soccer in the States.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's much more. It's got the glitz and glamour of other American sports, and the way that they can set up the stadium to serve an enormous amount of food and drink and that sort of stuff. And obviously, the English equivalents don't typically have that sort of capacity, but it feels more like a non-league setup where you would have more families, more community involvement, more sort of love for the team, but coming from a collective basis rather than you turn up and if you can get a ticket for your Premier League team, you'll be sitting next to loads of people who've never been to a football match before. If you're going top end, just coming for the experience of that rather than roaring behind the team. And some of the fan stuff that I've seen, watching highlights videos and watching fan experience videos, which I think are brilliant on YouTube. There's so many fantastic ones of those. But I think that you can see there is an element of tribalism, but it's a lot more friendly. It's a lot more sort of festive and like say family friendly and that sort of stuff. And yes, you might have a bit of a hardcore section like the ultras, that sort of stuff. But a lot of it is very, very accessible for people. It hasn't got the hostility that British football sometimes has to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so weird when you watch soccer in the UK, football, I guess I should call it in the UK, but because they're trying to entice more fans in. That is a big thing for a lot of football clubs, especially lower down, is they're trying to get more families in, but then they're sat there stood next to a guy who's stood up and shouting and swearing and all sorts of chants. And I know that in the UK there's a lot of people are watching the videos of MLS crowds and the fight and win guy from Seattle and whatever it was, and laughing at it. But that is it's a different way of doing it. I don't think the UK way of the chanting that goes on here would work over there and vice versa. But I think if I was an expat, if I was living in the States and I didn't I didn't have the history of MLS that I do, I would definitely and I had a family, I would definitely go with them, and I would definitely go and experience that, because it does seem that more family friendly atmosphere. And I think people do care whether the team loses or not, but it's more of a sociable aspect, whereas in this country you could go with your family, but if the team is losing, then it's going to be booze, it's going to be a very hostile atmosphere that you might not want to go back to.
Yeah, it can pretty quickly get pretty toxic, and then it becomes unpleasant sometimes, which is not the greatest thing that you want to bring your children into. So here we are, just for a bit of a timestamp on this one. We are recording this in December 2022. Obviously, we're on off season at the moment. We've talked about how the draft hasn't happened yet, and we're obviously going to be looking into the start of the season early in 2023. What are your thoughts? You don't necessarily have to give predictions and stuff, but what are you looking forward to? Who do you think is going to do well? Or is it too soon to tell when we don't know what the setup's going to be yet?
I think a bit of both. I think it is too soon to tell, but I think when you look at some of the stuff that's gone on already, Montreal last year did very, very well, but they've now lost a head coach and a few of the players. Alistair Johnston's gone to Celtic I don't know if it was off the back of his World Cup appearances. It was probably in the pipeline beforehand, but that's been confirmed now. Milivojevic has gone as well, and one or two others. So they've been decimated a bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come together again, how they rebuild. They had a similar season to what Colorado had 2 years ago when they finished top of the Western Conference, and then last year they didn't make the playoffs. So unfortunately for Montreal fans, I can see something similar happening to them. But in terms of at the top, I think for me, I'm really intrigued to see how New York City FC do. They almost got to MLS Cup again this year. It didn't quite work out for them, but they had a very, their season was, they started with Ronnie Dyler, they had Castellanos up front, and then halfway through the season they both went. So they had to, rebuild a little bit, and Nick Cushion came in and did very well. And I think we're full season with him and with the squad they've got. Will be really interesting. I can see them doing very well. Seattle's another one. They missed out on playoffs for the first time, so it's how they come back and refocus and try and get back into that. As I mentioned, that Columbus have now got a new head coach, and for a few years they've kind of threatened at the late stage to break into the playoffs, but they've not quite done it. And I think since winning MLS Cup a few years ago, they've struggled, and they've got a new stadium now and an expectant fan base who are wanting to see them challenge. So yeah, there's a lot of things like that. Atlanta, of course, they've got an expectant fan base, and there's a lot of change happening there. So personally, I think Atlanta might struggle this year as they rebuild, but I'd obviously hope they don't. So yeah, there's loads of these sort of little headlines that are starting already before the season. You mentioned before St. Louis are coming in. No one expects new franchise teams to make playoffs in the first year, but Charlotte almost did it, and Austin have done it in the second year. So yeah, there's loads of headlines. I mean, I'd probably, I'm going to stick my neck on the line at the moment and say LA Galaxy will win it. I think LA Galaxy will do really well. New York City FC, as I said. Philadelphia will be interesting because they have been so close the last few years.
Yeah, it's agonising for those guys.
Yeah, and last year it was literally a couple of kicks of the ball in the penalty shootout that made them not win it. And you wonder if they got the energy to go again and try and win it. You don't know. But so yeah, lots of headlines. But I think if I had to put my neck on the line now, I'd go LA Galaxy, New York City FC, and then MLS Cup.
Fantastic. We're going to lock that in. That's a brilliant prediction. Thanks for giving us that one. I suppose that obviously it does depend on the incomings and outgoings. I think the World Cup has really highlighted some brilliant players, some real talent in MLS as well. Obviously, USA team, Canada team. Not just those guys, but I mean, I know he didn't feature in the World Cup, but Tennis Magno was there as well with the Brazilian team. He's a very high profile name, obviously in the league. So you just don't know who's gonna be plucked out to go to another team, or who's gonna come in and make a surprise appearance to get Fabregas in the middle of the Inter Miami midfield.
Yeah, exactly. We're not even mentioning Inter Miami. If they end up getting Messi in the summer, then it's a different conversation. It might be similar to Toronto last year. They got Insigne and Bernardeschi, and they'll be a force this year, you'd think. So there's lots. It's funny because we look at these big players and think, oh, they'll make a difference, and then someone from absolutely nowhere or the U team will come in and, like I was saying at Dallas, and end up making a difference. So this is why the league's so hard to predict.
Yeah, fantastic. I can't wait already. I'm really gearing up for the new year. It's months away yet, but I really can't wait to get into it and just watch it all again. And I think, I'm trying not to fall in love with one or two particular teams, and maybe I will pick up a team along the way. But at the moment, I'm trying to stay as objective as I can while I talk to other fans and learn about the league.
Who are your favourite team? Who are the two or three? Who are your favourites at the moment?
I mean, Philadelphia, I think, is definitely the one that is scoring high. There's a Brendan Aronson connection there. I love what they're doing around the kind of story of everything. They've really made the club accessible. I think it's a lot. It seems to have a very good family atmosphere. They've obviously got the story of Fang, the football playing snake and stuff, which I think is brilliant. And the fact that they keep meeting with disappointment really makes me kind of go. I think it might be the British underdog thing, which makes me lean towards them. But to be honest, I keep switching back and forth on actually they look quite a nice team, and I think I'm going to reserve judgment for now, but they're the ones that I'm leaning most towards at the moment. But I love hearing all the stories, and that's going to, I think the folklore and the rivalries and stuff is going to all feed into whichever club I naturally settle down on. I'm sure there will be one.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with MLS, and this is the same with me and Elliott. Okay, he's supports Orlando, and I support Atlanta. And to be honest with Elliott, he's a very passionate Orlando fan. He supports Norwich City as well, and it's getting to be in half and half it. Whereas for me, with Atlanta, I follow Atlanta, I support them. But if you ask me about my fandom with them, it is a team that I enjoy watching. I enjoy everything about what they've built. But I just love the league, and that's the thing, is that we are lucky enough that we do get to cover all the league, and at times it's difficult to juggle all 30 teams, and now we keep on bringing more in. But no, I do have soft spots for every single team, and that is the genuine truth. And I think that's because you fall in love with this league and you see the little quirks. And as you said there with Philadelphia, I agree with everything you've said. And the picture of the stadium with the bridge in the background is brilliant. And you could ask me about every team, and I'll tell you something that I love about them. It is. I am lucky that I've chosen Atlanta. I've got an Atlanta shirt and all of that, but I do have a soft spot for every team, I've got to admit.
Yeah, no, I haven't been tempted. I do love football shirts. I mean, I've got a different one on every video I made. There's no Japan one today because they've just done brilliantly well in the World Cup. But yeah, I'm yet to buy an MLS club shirt. I bought the All Stars shirt just because it was cool. But yeah, that Atlanta one's the closest one I've come, to be honest. That shirt's beautiful. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it won every year. My wife does a kit review, so that
yes,
Atlanta
I saw that. Is it Poppy, the other one?
Poppy's kit reviews, yeah. That Atlanta one won it last year, so we'll have to see when. It's funny with that because I've got to keep the kits away from her, but they all get released, and then we don't do our season preview until the week before. And it's genuine. Her first reaction, it's like the World Cup ones we've just done. That was her first reaction to seeing them, and it is. People are tagging us in it when a shirt gets released. What does Poppy think? I'm like, can you stop tagging her because she can't see it until we record.
That's fantastic. If anyone's watching this who hasn't seen that, please go to the MLS UK channel and check that out. It is absolutely brilliant. The reactions to the shirts. So yeah, that's well worth a watch. Henry, that is fantastic. That's all I wanted to go through with you today. I really, really appreciate your time to talk to me on here. Like I say, anybody who hasn't checked out the podcast, please do. MLS UK. It is absolutely fantastic. Such a well put together. I think it makes sense now that you guys are radio professionals, because it is absolutely perfectly put together, and it's brilliant hearing your guys' views.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And it's we love doing it. And as time's gone on, and now me and Elliott don't work with each other. I work in the podcasting sort of realm, and he's still in radio. And it's sometimes we've got to try and find a 2-hour slot in our week to record it. But no, we still love doing it, and it's great getting to chat to people like you who also love the league, because, as you know, in this country, people know about MLS, but they don't have the passion for it. So, it's been good chatting to you. I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Hopefully, we can do it again one day. And I'll certainly be coming back to you with feedback on your predictions at the end of the 2023 season. Definitely.
Please don't, because they will be wrong.
Fantastic. I'll put all the links to MLS UK will be in the description below. But please do check out the show if you haven't already, because it is absolutely fantastic. Henry, thank you ever so much for your time. Extend our thanks and warm greetings to Elliott as well, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah, thank you.